Well, happy Wednesday. It's another Wednesday, and this is episode number 9 from Richard Rosen, your friendly undertaker here in Winnipeg of Richard Rosen Funeral Director Limited. And with us today is Sharon Hartung, your digital undertaker. Sharon was with us our last episode. It's funny the amount of things that have happened since she was here last. Welcome back.
Thanks, Richard. Great to be back so soon, and on the heels of a fantastic STEP webinar on Monday. Just delighted to be here.
Yeah. So I've been running these sessions now on different topics in the death care and the estate industries, and it's really about death literacy. It's really to bring awareness to a number of things in more of a positive way to get people, get folks ready for experiences that they have to face. And as an undertaker, you can really you can probably guess how uncomfortable it is for folks to talk about death. Nobody wants to. We're all going to be invincible. We're all going to live forever and ever. But to bring awareness in a way this way is a lot easier, I find, because it's about technology, and everybody is impacted with technology in one way or another. For example, how many people have 12 flashing on their VCRs? Still, so if they still have those things. So we've had Sharon here before, and we're looking forward to a good 20 minutes of your time invested here with us. If you've got any questions, you can post them on the chat piece, and there'll be links that will come along as Sharon is speaking. Some really good things that are happening here that we'll post, and some information at the end about what's coming up. And then we'll wrap up and say goodbye. So let's get right to it. You had an interesting event on Monday, an international event with the Society of Trustees and Estate Planners. Can you tell us a little bit about the event, Sharon?
Oh, absolutely, Richard. And it was great to see you there. So thanks for signing up as a delegate. And I saw you get right in there on the questions for the panel. So I appreciate that. Now, the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, STEP, for short, which I'm part of, is a global organization of estate practitioners. It's a variety of professions, from legal, tax, funeral, gift planners, financial and wealth planners, and now IT practitioners like myself. So STEP has 7 special interest groups, and they've been holding an annual spotlight event for each SIG. Now, I'm part of the Digital Asset Special Interest Group, which formally stood up in 2017. Prior to that, they had a working group around digital assets because they knew it would be of a concern to practitioners, and I think they started around 2013. Now, we've had this annual in-person event with our global members every year in London, UK. It's a pretty great event. And this year, like many organizations, we've all pivoted to the pandemic realities of no travel and moved to the global virtual webinar format, and so did the STEP SIG. It's actually going on through the rest of the week until Friday. And I chaired a panel called Digital Assets in Estate Planning, Understanding the Technology and Service Provider Viewpoint. It was terrific. We have had some fantastic guests. These are really super smart people who are involved in the front lines of digital asset research and delivery. Just to share a little bit of who I had and what they talked about. So I had Dave Michaels from Queen Mary University in the UK. He shared kind of what I call the state of the nation on provider terms of service and dealing with incapacity and or death from his Beyond the Cloud studies. Dr. Adina Harbanja from the Aston University, UK, she shared her work and perspectives on post-mortem privacy. This is a complicated area because we have post-mortem wishes about our data that could conflict with not only service providers, but beneficiaries and executors who might need the information to do their job. So a pretty complicated area, and she explained it really beautifully. Fergal Brown from Facebook was there. Really interesting. He's a policy stakeholder manager at Facebook. Fergal talked about how Facebook approaches stakeholder engagement, takes input. He took us to the back room of how their teams are organized to deal with memorialization and legacy contacts. So really fascinating. I can't wait to get the replay so I could just listen to all the speakers again, because they had such good information. I don't think I caught it all in the first round. And the last speaker, Dr. Jed Brubaker from the Identity Lab. He's part of the Information Science Department at the University of Colorado in the US. And he had been involved as a consultant in the early days of Facebook legacy contacts. So I had a lot of really good perspectives in terms of that time and then reflecting back. Now, getting these different perspectives was tremendous, from the policy, the law, human-centric design aspects, tech. You know, I ran this specific panel to launch a regular conversation between STEP and our SIG members as an estate industry and the tech industry. Now, as you know, Richard, you and I talked yesterday, the session was way too short. I could have spent hours geeking out with this guest panel for sure. Now, we had another excellent digital asset session yesterday, which was number 2, called Dawn of the New Era, Digitization of Estate Legislation, with Lee Sager from the UK, Kimberly Martin from Australia, both members of the Digital Asset SIG Committee, and Lee is our chair. This session explored the area of evolving electronic wills legislation and what's happening globally. Now, the context of this topic is that in most places, the law or legislation, which is jurisdictionally based, says that a legally valid will is a physically signed document with what the estate industry called wet signatures. So think of it as a will is a physical document with original signatures. This session was about the legislation that's being considered jurisdictionally that will allow for an electronic will, you know, a form of, a digital form of a will, what is allowed, how it could work, what would work. And so Kimberly gave us a state of the nation on who has globally legislated such laws that will recognize an electronic will and which countries and jurisdictions are considering it. So this is another big area that we'll see unfold as we go. And then we have a third digital asset SIG segment this week, and there's still time to sign up. It's tomorrow, December 3rd. Digital asset planning for incapacity and estate administration with Jack Burrows of our Digital Asset Committee, Dr. Elaine Casket. So she's a psychologist and author of a tremendous book called All the Ghosts in the Machine. Nick Gazzard, he's the founder and charity CEO of the Holly Gazzard Trust, and Tim Farmer is the founder and CEO of TFSS Consultants in the UK. Now, this panel is focused on the client's perspective, the family perspective, the beneficiary's perspective, all critical elements of the journey as we navigate to understand what happens to our digital lives on death. Now, in closing on the STEP front, as you know, I'm a big STEP fan. I'd welcome anybody in the death care or estate industries to join a STEP digital asset special interest group or any one of the other special interest groups. It's no charge, and you do not need to be a STEP member. You can just follow the link, and Richard will put that in the window there. In addition to digital assets, as I said, there are SIGs that cover business families, contentious trusts and estates, cross-border estates, international clients, mental capacity, and the philanthropy advisor as well. Now, the one last cool thing to share is STEP has a new program in addition to the SIGs called Friends of STEP program. You can become part of the STEP community and information network. There's some great publications like the STEP Journal you get access to. Now, if you're not able to or eligible to join STEP by one of the other membership routes, but have a keen interest in trust and estates, you'll want to check this Friends of the STEP out. There is an annual fee for this in a short form to complete, but tremendous ability to be able to engage with the STEP community. Lots about STEP, Richard, but I'll take it back to you.
Great, thank you. You know, the thing that I've learned now from getting to know you and understanding and being part of the society is really, it's open communication across the planet. And with the major stakeholders, like to have Facebook at the table is, I think it's pretty significant. And for the average person to realize that there is a big challenge, that they're staring at usernames and passwords and whatever else that they have, that at least that they know that here's a group of individuals like-minded with various disciplines that are working hard to try to make legislation equal and smooth for everybody. And I think it's and kudos to you, really, Sharon, for taking charge, and especially with the where we're going to go now. And the topic today is really about, you know, how do you keep track of all of this stuff? How do you keep track of your digital assets? And I know that STEP has had a digital asset inventory on their online on their website. And I know you've been involved with 2.0. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that project and what it means.
Delighted to. Thank you, Richard. You know, I love talking about this stuff all the time. First, I thought if you wouldn't mind, I'll set some context. As you introduced at the beginning, death literacy, you know, those terms in the death positive community, death care and estate industry, those terms are just not as well known or discussed as we become to understand financial literacy as an example. I find it helpful, even as an engineer, to understand what's what first, so we know what we're talking about. So why would anybody need a digital asset inventory to start? At our last Facebook Live event, I shared that a digital asset, I refer to it as our memory, our money, and our records, which are now in digital form instead of paper. Anything we do online, these are electronic records. I also shared that STEP has a definition that considers digital assets as having the same value as our physical assets, financial value or sentimental value. We have some of the same emotional attachments to our digital footprint as we do with our physical assets. And that's useful to know because that helps in estate planning. So creating an inventory is a basic first step in will and estate planning. If I just take the mechanical perspective, an advisor, an estate planner would ask you about or ask you for a list of your physical assets and your property rights. Now, the word assets, again, is another estate industry term. It generally means the things you own. Your advisors and estate planners would also ask you a myriad of other questions like who are your beneficiaries, who's your family or friends, your most important wishes and preferences, how do you want to look after yourself and your beneficiaries. And certainly there's a more holistic view of the estate planning equation that includes your legacy wishes, your charitable wishes, your advanced care plans, taxes, it's endless. And these are all important considerations. But if we get to the nuts and bolts of some of the process elements, traditionally, that list or inventory has just been about our physical assets and our physical rights, like your bank account, your home, your coin collection, your photo albums, and your mementos, maybe even your furniture. It's a really important list for your executor or your state trustee or your fiduciary, because if you don't create a list and leave one for them in advance, they'll have to create one for themselves because that's how they begin their jobs. And if you don't leave one, it just ends up being a big detective effort for them to figure it out. And the long-standing advice from estate planners we know is to create an estate binder, a folder, or simply a piece of paper with information for our executor. Ideally, it encapsulates your estate plan, gives enough information for your beneficiaries and executors to know what to do, where to find things, and execute on your wishes. And as you know, Richard, I get into this in the book in quite detail. Now, we all have digital lives. And as such, we do things online and we're creating a digital footprint. So think of the digital asset inventory just as an extension to your physical inventory or estate binder. You're just now adding the digital aspects of your life to the things that already exist. So STEP, as you mentioned, created an inventory for digital assets and digital device. Version 1 was published back in 2017. And as a committee, we worked together to revise it this last summer of 2020. Now, ultimately, it's written for clients, any one of us on this Facebook Live. It was also written in a way that advisors could give to a client. And we did also write this version 2.0 with the tech industry in mind. And I'll share you why we did that when we wrap up. Now, this inventory has 3 main parts. Section 1 is for digital assets, those pure electronic records. Section 2 is for digital devices. Those are the physical devices we use, the tablets or computers or our smartphones. And the third and final section is called digital accounts. Those are the online accounts we use to access what are known as underlying assets, such as bank accounts, home management accounts, and loyalty points. Now, this version 2.0 is chock full of questions to help you fill out the inventory. We also added tips for every digital asset type. Now, certainly there are new types that will continue to grow every day, and down the road, I'm sure we'll have a version 3.0. And the other point to note is it's for personal use, and there are, of course, a bunch of other information that will be required if you have any sort of business. Now, what I thought I'd do today is share some samples from the inventory. So I'm going to share 2. If you look under the digital asset section, they have one called social media platforms. And like I said, they have tips in each section. So here's an example of a social media tip. So I'm going to quote from the inventory itself. So quote, look for and ask for provider pre-planning options. For example, Facebook Legacy Contact has the option to select either memorialize or delete an account. You can search in setting or help to find it. If you select a person other than your fiduciary, that's your executor or your estate trustee, As legacy contact, let the fiduciary know, end quote. So I'll comment on that by saying, social media is a new item to consider from an estate planning perspective. We're going to learn as consumers in the estate industry how to do so. And the idea that you might pick someone different from your fiduciary is not unsimilar to picking a beneficiary as you might for an insurance policy. But some of the same estate planning concepts still apply, along the lines of you might want to let your beneficiary know, you might want to let your executor know, and certainly let the person know that you've selected for some of these pre-planning options. Here's a second example, an online account tip, such as those digital accounts I mentioned as the third category, providing access to an underlying asset or insurance such as a bank account or investment account. So here's a quote, password sharing is prohibited for most, if not all, online accounts. Refer to the terms of service and or just jurisdictional specific laws. Contact each institution to determine if any advanced planning or registration is available, such as registering the fiduciary or providing separate, secure, and compliant access. Ask what information can be shared in advance with the fiduciary, end quote. Now, given we generally deal online as online, we sometimes forget there's actually a company or organization behind the scene when we deal with the financial institutions and otherwise. You can reach out to their customer service. You can ask the institution you deal with, certainly, hopefully once again in person, online, or over the phone. For example, if you appoint someone as an attorney in your power of attorney documents or end of care plans, that attorney should not be using your login and passwords. They should be reaching out to the institution you deal with the correct documentation to get their own credentials or make other arrangements in line with your specific circumstances. Now, this example should illustrate that not all digital assets are handled or planned in the same way. Now, if you look at this step, digital asset inventory, it's long, there's 20 pages in there, but keep in mind that it was written to be somewhat encompassing, really to encourage us to consider how digital we've become, but don't get overwhelmed at all. The inventory information also encourages you to reflect on the 3 most important digital assets that you would be devastated if they're not available to your beneficiaries. Actually, it gets right to it in page 7, and there's a link to an article about it. I'd say start there. Capture the most important accounts first, and then work your way back through some of the other items. And I know your executor or trustee will thank you. Hopefully the step inventory as information is enough of an overview to encourage folks to consider documenting their digital lives as well as their physical lives in the will and estate planning process. Now, certainly it doesn't end at the inventory. You'll want to wrap any legal, tax, and other estate planning considerations and instructions around it. And certainly from a tech management perspective, as you know, Richard, you and I have talked a lot about this, there are other information that may be required to successfully transfer a digital asset. Right. Now, if anyone listening to this Facebook Live or replay, if you end up using the step inventory, please do let me know if you have any feedback. And if you find another great inventory out there, do let me know as well, because I love to share this kind of information on Twitter. The only other reflective statement I'll say is tech entrepreneurs have already been in the space for several years, creating what STEP would refer to as a digital asset vault, in addition to what I expect will be an explosion of choices for applications or online services or digital vaults for one's traditional physical inventory, and now including the digital one. As the estate industry digitizes, in my opinion, we'll see a number of solutions and more integrated products in the future that will cover estate planning and estate administration processes, as well as incapacity management. So with that, maybe I'll just turn it back to you, Richard. I know that's a long-winded summary of the inventory, but there you go.
Thank you. Well, you've covered it, because it's I remember growing up that Dad told us that we were going to gather everything because there was a rash of break-ins on our street. So to gather all of the stuff that we had, and he went into the workroom and he stood there in his workshop and he said, "Where do I start? I've got hammers and I've got power tools, and where do I start?" And it feels the same way now, and it's almost more difficult because we've written on a scratch piece of paper the new password because you forgot it, and now you can't find that piece of paper. It's a challenge. One question I have for you is, you mentioned about the actual physical, like our devices. But would devices include like something like your Alexa at home, Wi-Fi locks, thermostats, doorbells? Would that that would include as a digital asset because they are connected, are they not?
Absolutely. In fact, in the digital accounts section, there's a section for home IT, home information technology. So we used to only use those words at work, but now we have, like you said, wireless routers. We've got IoT devices that talk to our routers. We have home security systems. So there's a information technology section for our digital accounts, and we've also put home management in there where you can tuck in some of these other items that you might have.
Right.
The one big one actually I find is even one's home security system, whether that is cameras or access to your front door lock, etc. You know, those kinds of things people are going to have to know about in order to get in.
Yeah. So if anybody gets a crock pot that is Wi-Fi run, that you can turn it on and off from work, don't forget to put that on your digital asset listing because it's going to be very important. It's going to be probably the biggest fight in your whole estate plan.
Yeah, maybe not the crock pot, but all the recipes that the wonderful recipes that people come up with. I think is those kinds of things could become mementos too, right?
Absolutely, and if they are good recipes, please pass them along to Sharon and I, please. We'd appreciate that. Well, we've come to 21 minutes, and the time. This is episode 9, and I'm so grateful for the time that everyone puts in, and Sharon and all the other guests that we've had. And 20 minutes almost doesn't seem enough, but we're wrapping up, and I just want to say, Sharon, thank you again for being here, but everything that you're doing to make people's lives better, to make a positive difference and change at levels that are really important on an international basis with some really key areas for digital devices and assets, and the role that you've played for creating the inventory. It's crucial information for everybody, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that.
Community support and awareness for Sharon and I is really crucial. So if you're in a community and considering doing client webinars on this topic, where you're a community group or an association, reach out to me, and you'll find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or you can follow me here on Facebook. And reach out, and perhaps we can talk about doing an event for your own organization. So one more thing to say before we say goodbye. Because it's Christmas, we're going to be squeezing, instead of every second Wednesday, we've got next Wednesday, which is the 9th. And we will have with us Nicola Finch, who is an end-of-life doula, and she's part of the Caribou Community Death Caring Network. She's also part of the Caribou Community Green Burial Society up in North British Columbia. She lives off the grid, and she's an interesting person. I'm really looking forward to having her with us. December 6th is my gift to you, and to everyone who follows, who's made comments, who reaches out. This is my gift, and it's going to be a musical treat for Christmas. So I'm not going to tell you any more than that. I'm going to leave that for you. So Sharon, thank you once again, for all that you do, and thank you for joining us here today.
Excellent. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you. And folks, everybody stay safe, keep smiling. This is Richard Rosen from Winnipeg, Winnipeg's friendliest undertaker, signing off.